Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn, and I'm thrilled to have with me today Ralph Hartmeier. Ralph is the co-founder of Getkickbox, the corporate startup coming out of Swisscom, enabling scalability of innovation and idea generation in large companies. Ralph, it's wonderful speaking with you today.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. So for people who don't know about you and your journey, could you just give us a brief background as to how you got into the innovation sort of industry like this?
Sure. I need to go back a few years. Actually, when I started business, I had my first student job in a bigger corporate. And that's the first time I realized if I put this energy I put in my student job, basically doing Excel files all over, into my own thing, it could actually turn out to be something really valuable and fun. So that was the moment when I founded my own first startup, which was a lot of fun building something up. But after a while, after a year or two, actually, we failed miserably with it. So there was a big learning. Well, emotionally not as easy as I tell it here now. But it was the moment I got hooked with building up something new, building up something which wasn't there before, and then satisfying customers with a product or a service. And my co-founder back then, he joined Swisscom afterwards. Swisscom, which is a government-owned company in Switzerland. So it's not really the place you want to work as an entrepreneur. So I went abroad instead, and when I came back, he rang me up again and said, Ralph, now you need to join Swisscom because we're just about to start to bring into a big corporate a startup culture and push innovation projects forward with a little box. And that was appealing to me, or quite a crazy thought. So that's when I joined Swisscom, and it's now roughly 4 years ago.
And this crazy little box, that's the Kickbox, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. That's the Kickbox.
And for people who don't know about Kickbox, I assume you're not talking about kickboxing like what Jean-Claude Van Damme does. What is a kickbox?
Yeah, luckily it's not the sport. But Kickbox is actually, the original idea came from Adobe. Mark Randall, a brilliant guy and serial entrepreneur, he sold his last company to Adobe. And he became there the vice president of creativity. And he realized that so many people, the staff has so brilliant ideas, but there was also always only this letterbox to put in ideas and basically wait for your bonus. So he changed it up. He wanted to make innovation tangible. And that was the moment he came up with Kickbox, which is basically a toolbox with a process in there, guiding you from a raw idea you had to actually a validated idea with first data in it, first customer feedback in it. And he started distributing these toolboxes to employees who had ideas and open sourced the process. And we, as a Swisscom team, we actually saw Mark Randall presenting that on stage, and we thought that's quite a brilliant idea to make it more gamified and tangible, and took over the material from Mark and started adapting it over the years within the Swisscom context.
And I understand that one of the tools which was in the original Kickbox was $1,000 to spend however you want to. Is that still how it's done nowadays?
More or less. We did it. Firstly, we did that as well. So we put in a prepaid credit card with 1,000 Swiss francs in our case. Compliance perspective was really hard to negotiate with our corporate people because we had no clue what happens with this money. Besides that, it got harder and harder to get these prepaid credit cards because the people selling them to us, they thought we're doing really illegal stuff with it, obviously. So we had to automate that process and get a bit more controlling in it. And that was one reason why we started building up our own software. And now it's a really smooth process. So the moment you actually have your own Kickbox project up and running, you get 1,000 coins. And these 1,000 coins you can either use for services like, you talk 1 hour to a marketing guy and get his feedback on your prototype, and that costs you a certain amount of these coins. You can book directly on the software, or you can still say, I need real money because I need to buy a train ticket. And then it's basically an expenditure process, which is still gives you freedom, but it's still a bit controllable for the accounting team of the bigger corporates.
I remember when the first Kickbox video came out, and I was so intrigued by this concept of just giving your team the money to do whatever they like, because it's not just about the money, it's about the permission to go and try new things. Even if they decide to run an experiment by buying $1,000 worth of pizza and then doing all the work themselves, or using it to outsource some of the work, but it's that authority to try things in your own way. So that's what really intrigued me at the beginning. And I'd like to find out more now about how does the Kickbox sort of process work, and what have been your experiences both within Swisscom and with some of the other companies that you're working with?
Sure. So the process is really important because we see people handing in an idea, which might be huge, might be even a vision behind it. But then to actually get started, get into the doing is really difficult if you don't know where to start. And most people don't know where to start. So we took the material from Adobe, which was a process how to approach that. And in the meantime, in the last 4 years, we rewrote it 4 or 5 times, I think. And the last version we didn't write it ourselves anymore. We wrote it together with our peers, so with the other core companies we're working with, but also with consultants, entrepreneurs. And the result is the Kickbook, which I can actually give you a link afterwards in the description, and you can download it for free. It's the Kickbook, which starts with your motivation. You need to know why you want to actually embark on such a journey. And then we go really deep into the problem, because that's very typical for human beings. We don't want to really talk about the problem. We want to jump onto the product or to the solution because that's cool to talk about. So we try to force the people to really think and test the problem they want to solve. And then in a very gamified way, we move them along the process from the problem to the solution, and actually help them to structure their thoughts, to structure their data they have gathered in order to convince eventually somebody of the management to sponsor a pilot project.
And what sort of ideas are the types of ideas that end up getting supported? Is it just anyone who has any idea automatically gets a Kickbox, or is there some sort of review process beforehand?
That's a bit different per company. Our suggestion is always, and that's how we run it at Swisscom and at most companies we're working with, to do the first phase. We call it the red box phase. So there is the validation happening as open as possible, because it's just impossible to choose based on a raw idea the best ideas, because a raw idea can iterate, can pivot, and the person behind the idea is anyway much more important than the idea itself. So what we said at the beginning, we need to be able to have a first phase, the red box phase, which is open to everyone. Everyone can get started, but that meant obviously to bring the cost per idea, per validation down. So we built a lot of automation in there, so that we can actually push a lot of people in there. And the nice side effect of it is that every employee submitting an idea has a positive experience, because there's not this thing which is happening in many corporates that they make a shout out for ideas, they get 100 ideas, and then this management board is gathering around the table and choosing which idea are the best based on their subjective feelings, let's be honest. And this is impossible in our opinion. And we said, let's skip that, which is very demotivating for most employees. So let's give everyone the chance. Everyone has the chance to prove, hey, I'm motivated, I'm good at it, and this idea has actually meat at the bone. And that's why we leave the first phase highly automated, open for everyone. And we basically can sit back, relax a little bit. And after 2 months, they come back, pitch what they have done, how they gather data around their idea. And that's the first gate we do. And not before.
There's actually quite a lot of research to back up the sort of things you described there. When people in a decision-making capacity are given a list of things to choose from, quite often if you ask them, what are you looking for? They'll say, oh, creativity, originality. But if you look at what they're choosing, their reaction to creative ideas is usually more related to disgust than it is to pleasure. And so they might think that they're choosing creative ideas, but in reality, they're more prone to choose more risk-averse ideas that are a lot more similar to what they know will work already. Have you found this process sort of impacts the decision-making in any way?
Yes, definitely. Because what happens naturally, if you say, okay, this first phase is open to everyone, because we also regard this first phase more as an educational phase for the kickboxers, for the entrepreneurs, more than an actual innovation, because there's everything in there. But the great side effect is that even though I'm the head of blockchain, for example, everyone can actually get started with a blockchain idea. So for me, for myself as head of blockchain, I might find other intrinsic motivated people within my company, which I not even was aware of, or I can be challenged by somebody in my strategy or in my product development because somebody starts developing his own idea. But of course, then after the first phase, they need to find a sponsor within the company. And that's where, of course, the head of blockchain would be the obvious sponsor for a blockchain idea. So we don't want that there are lots of hidden projects going on in a company. Actually, the opposite should be true. So we make all these projects visible on the software to connect the people who are actually have the same motivation for their projects. But at some point, and that's for us the second phase, there needs to be a sponsor saying, yes, that's valuable, I actually pay a pilot. And that's for us the second phase, which is called blue box phase in our case.
So we've been talking about people submitting ideas and trying them out themselves, but this concept of ideas can be quite vague. Can you give us some examples of the types of situations or ideas where this process really helps out, either small experiments or other types of ideas, and maybe examples where some other process is probably a bit more appropriate?
So the great thing is, as diverse your staff is, the diverse are the idea submissions which are coming in. So we do see lots of product innovation coming out of the Kickbox funnel, but also process innovation. And these processes which we want to achieve to be more efficient and cost savings, they work out quite well because the process, as I described, starts always with the problem. So they need to define which problem they want to solve. And that's true for both cases. And to be very concrete, I would like to share one example. There was a Swisscom employee who submitted the idea that he wants to build a smart tracker for his washing machine, for his laundry machine. Why? Because he had probably the very personal pain point that he lived in the 4th or 5th floor of his apartment, of his house, and the washing machine was in the cellar. Quite often is that actually the use case in Switzerland. And he kept walking down to realize the washing is not done yet. So his solution was a smart tracker. So we tried to, and the process does it, focus on the problem. And he didn't really want to focus on a problem. Instead, he built on Raspberry Pi, he built the prototype. And the next time I saw him for a coaching, he said, well, it's done. I built it. I'm over. I'm done. You can hand over the gold box to me. And I was like, well, the next step would be that you knock on your neighbor's door and try to sell it. He did that with the realization that everyone else just sets a timer on the mobile phone and they don't have this problem. But then he started thinking, what else could I do with this smart tracker I built? And there was the moment he realized I could actually do a B2B case out of it. And nowadays he is a startup up and running on the market with around 10 to 20 corporates as customers. And the tracker stayed pretty much the same, but it's not in the washing machine anymore, but it's actually in the office space, trying to monitor how the office space is used so that facility management can actually adapt the usage of the office space. And this example shows really well that in our opinion, the idea is not as important as the person behind it. And in many, many corporate innovation programs, an intelligent washing machine tracker would have been declined from the first very day on. And we said, yeah, sure, go ahead. Worst case, which can happen, is that he used up 1,000 Swiss francs, that he worked a little bit part-time during 2 months on this idea, learned a lot, developed an understanding of innovation, and goes back to his job. And best case is actually what happens, that he pivots and finds something which is actually valuable for Swisscom as well, because Swisscom actually is big in connectivity, obviously, as an IT and telco provider, and this sensor is powered by, or is run by low power by a LoRa network, and Swisscom is a provider of it. So a nice mutual agreement there as well.
So that's obviously an example of an idea that really ended up working throughout the system. But I'd also like your opinion on, is there value in the Kickbox system for finding ideas which just don't work?
Yeah, I mean, in our own team, we have people, they begging or they talking about the same idea for a year. And instead of, as a direct boss, instead of listening to it for over a year, you can just grab a box and tell them, okay, validate it. And if it's good enough, you're gonna proceed. So it's really good to shut down ideas. And I think that's important, that I think it's even a weakness of bigger corporates, really clear decisions. In my opinion, we do, especially in employee-driven innovation, we do them too early. We get our ideas and then we say no to the most of them, because we are afraid that there's something which we cannot control existing. So we say no to them. But afterwards, once we're starting validating and once we're starting running a pilot, bigger companies sometimes really struggle to make clear decisions. Yes, we go all in and we put another 5, 10, 20 million in, or no, we stop it completely. And I think that's really important, that we actually can do these clear decision points. So 90% of all ideas which start, they fail. They can't find a sponsor because it's just not relevant for Swisscom. Some of these ideas are pursued afterwards by the employees in their free time, not with Swisscom, which is great as well. But still, probably 80% are ideas which have been validated and have been validated not to be valuable.
I think I remember, and I don't know if it was from the video or some other place I read about the the Kickbox examples while they were still at Adobe. And there was some showcase of 5 or 10 people who'd started the Kickbox program in front of the panel of partners. And there was one person who stood up and said, I had this idea and I spent the last 3 months trying to prove it. And I'm really sorry, but I seem to have wasted the €1,000 or the $1,000 because it just doesn't work and no one wants to buy it. And instead of sort of giving them a pat on the shoulder and saying, look, it's okay, everyone fails, the partners actually seem to applaud him and say, you have just proved for $1,000 that we would have previously spent probably a year and a half with long bureaucratic business cases and $100,000 prototype, trying to prove something, bringing it to the market, and only then realizing that it was not going to work and failing.
Absolutely. I think that's the magic of Kickbox, that you can first motivate your employees and save a lot of money potentially for your company, because the employees learn how to validate lean and cheap. I just had a talk with another company, and apparently they went with our program to the employees and asked them what they think about it. And they got several times the answer, well, it's only 1,000 Swiss francs. How do I want to validate an idea with 1,000 Swiss francs? And she asked me, well, I need more money per box, per idea. And I was like, no, that's the magic. We want to do transformation. And you wonder how much today is possible with only 1,000 Swiss francs. You can actually get customer feedbacks on most ideas in with only 1,000 Swiss francs.
So I think the last question then is, what sort of things can you do with the 1,000 francs or €1,000 or 1,000 Singapore dollars? What might it be? What sort of ways can you get feedback or validation that people usually think takes tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Sure. So for us, the first phase, the validation phase, is really focused in most cases on desirability. So because that's main reason why a startup fails, just nobody want to pay for it. So let's make sure that we build something people want to have and want to pay something for. And so some easy ways to validate that with less than 1,000 Swiss francs or 1,000 coins is just bringing up a landing page with your product or your value proposition on it, and buying some Google AdWords, and then see what the conversion is and how many people are actually going through the whole purchasing order and actually purchase your product. And then of course at the end you need to, in a polite way, sorry, it's only a test, but am I allowed to get in contact with you again? Give me your email address. And that's perfect, because you already have the early adopters, and you can actually add on that with qualitative interviews, because you do have these people who actually clicked. And nowadays that got very, very easy to do. You don't need to be a guy working in IT to actually bring up a landing page which is nicely designed, and Google AdWords is also not a miracle anymore. So that's super easy to do. And that's why we wrote this Kickbook. It's a very hands-on guide how to do such things. And if you can't do it, then there's still this 1,000 coins on our software which you can spend for service providers. So you can still, for example, if you are more in a B2B case, then the feasibility is often something which kills you, because it's just, your idea might be brilliant, but it costs already millions just to build a prototype. So rather book an hour with a legal expert to actually get a legal perspective on your idea. Book an hour with an IT expert to get his opinion on it. So gather these opinions, and you will have much more firing power towards top management in comparison with just a raw idea.
Ralph, it's been wonderful speaking with you. If people want to find out more about Getkickbox, the system that you use, and even just your own insights, what's the best place they can go to find out more?
So you find us online on www.getkickbox.com, or hit me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to have a chat with you. And I put in the link also where you can download the Kickbook for free. And if you have any feedback to that, please let us know as well.
Perfect. Ralph, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders, and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they are backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.